Welcome to you all. We're live streaming this, so I hope that many students, either directly or later on, or through you, because you're agents of communication and agents of change as well, get the message, and the message is essentially a story. It is not a, although some slides might look like that, it is not a list of things to do to avoid, a list of complaints, a list of threats and opportunities and challenges. It's essentially a story. And the story is not mine. I'm honored that I can tell you the story, but the story is essentially, quintessentially I would say, a story told by students and a story told by young staff, senior staff, faculty, I mean, and also by people in the support staff. So it is not my story. I do not claim credits for that. The only credits I can claim here is that I have tried to make it a coherent, consistent story that is the basis of a renewed strategy, of a renewed school. And the renewed is important because it is not about a new strategy. We're going to change everything and what we've been doing is all wrong, or the world has changed and we are drastically going to do other things. It is also not a story about a new school, because the house is the house, and it's a great house. It's a great house in the sense that, and I'm very active in ACSB and EFMD EQUIS accreditation, AMBA accreditation. I do peer review teams. I meet at, every year we have the ACSB Deans Conference, the EQUIS EFMD Deans Conference, so I meet lots of colleagues. I visited many schools as peer review team member. This means that you have all the documentation of the school in terms of finances, students, programs, assurance of learning, accreditation. You're really in the kitchen of the school. So you, or backstage, you know the schools, you develop relationships, you know your colleagues. So I think I know what I am. From that point of view, I think I'm pretty sure that I know what I'm talking about here. And this is a great school. Because we are on the list of many schools' aspirant members. That means that every school that is accredited has a list of peers, schools they themselves think they can be compared with, they're on par with. With on par, the mean peer, and on par means the same. And every school also has got to write down 2 or 3 institutions that they think are still yet better than them, and they aspire to being on the par of that school. We are amazingly, in an amazing number, we're on a list of aspirants. So many schools, like Copenhagen Business School, Leeds Business School, they put us either on their peer list or on their aspirant list. So we have a very strong reputation in the outside world. Do we deserve it? Yes, we do. But the reputation in the outside world is that strong that we need to move to keep it that way. Or that we need to move to even strengthen that kind of reputation. So coming back to the story and starting the story is that, again, it's not a list, a problem list or a threat list or an opportunity list. It is a story told to me by students, staff members, and support staff members. And let me tell you a bit of the story of about the strategic process. I started as Dean in September 2013, and immediately also engaged in the ACSB and the EQUIS networks. And I got really inspired by what young colleagues, students told me, either in student council or faculty council or program committee. That I started the strategic process by asking Kees Mouwen, and Kees Mouwen is a executive board member of universities here in the Netherlands. He's done many reorganizations. He's a great researcher, and he has a clear view and on what a school should be or should try to become, and how to engage with students. So when I asked him to move around in the school, talk to students, talk to staff members, senior, junior, support staff members, and write down what he saw as this is what these people want. This is what these people see as opportunities. This is what people say, well, okay, we'd like to get there, but sometimes there are some structures in the way, or there's a lack of resources, or we've been discussing this for years now and we don't seem to be able to make a decision on that. And he came with that list, which I presented to the community, also to the students community last year. And we decided on 4+1 task forces to find out, argue, analyze, structure the thoughts that Kees Mouwen presented to us in a first round. So we had strategic task forces. The foremost and the most important strategic task force, if you ask me, as a dean, and I chaired that task force together with Pascal Lelkens, who is the predecessor of Rendy, as chair of the student council, was the student-driven strategy group. In that group were represented students and also young staff members. And that group had the freedom of setting the agenda, because I did not limit their task to think about innovation in education, or think about how to increase or make more relevant the research we're doing, or think about how to develop business school activities and increase revenue streams by selling either educational programs to companies or engage in whatever. So they had a free agenda. It was their agenda. And what we did was we started off by asking them a couple of questions in terms of what do you think are therefore your dreams? What do you think the school has up to this point failed at? What do you think are the key success factors of the school? Where have we been very successful? And what kind of nightmares do you see? Things that this school should absolutely avoid. Yeah? That was the first team. I'll get to the analysis later on. The more formal teams, in the sense that it involved senior faculty, researchers and educators, and support staff members, had been given the agenda: how do we further innovate our educational programs? How do we innovate the bachelor programs? How do we innovate the master's programs? And how do we innovate education in general? And not only the content of the courses, because that's something you don't need to discuss at this stage, but how do you renovate, innovate the pedagogy, the didactic concepts, the tools and tricks we as a school can share, offer to students to enrich their learning experience here. So not only content driven, because this is for the field experts, yeah? But how do you engage, get more motivated students? How do you deliver to students the value that they perceive as what they should be offered at this school if they leave the school with a degree, either bachelor or master? So that was innovation in education and in the education system. The second group was focused on research. By the way, why do we want to innovate in research? We see and we hear from students, and we see this in Elsevier rankings, that we are losing position in terms of, a couple of years ago we had #1, and we still have #1 educational programs, but some of them have slipped to a second place, and some are even closer to the third and the first position, and this is something we do not want. Because we're the School of Business and Economics of Maastricht University, and we are used to #1 positions. You can't win them all, but we'd like to win them all, and we'd like to win most of all. Yeah? So that was kind of a warning sign, and this is what student expects from us. Because you're selected here, you're an international university with a problem-based learning, a very innovative educational system. We attract many German students, Belgian students, Dutch students all over Europe, and you'd like to finish with a #1 degree, I assume. Yeah? And we have to make that happen. The research, we're doing well, we're in the middle of the pack of the Dutch universities, and by the way, Dutch economic and business research is, in Europe, has a sub-top position. You're always outmatched, either based on true objective quality or perceived quality, by Oxford and by Harvard. Yeah, that's the eternal four. Well, eternal, things can change, but it will not change in half a generation or a generation. Yeah, but the Dutch universities are clearly at the sub-top, and if you look at official reports, then the real top in Europe and the Dutch universities, they overlap a bit here, and we leave 10, max 15 institutions clearly and significantly, like London Business School, London School of Economics, and Oxford Saïd Business School at that top. But we're doing very well, and Maastricht is in the middle of that pack. That's acceptable. That's not too bad, certainly not in a European or international perspective. That's also not bad because we are a relatively young university and we do not have high citations and no Nobel Prize winners. Yeah? But it is not the position that we want. Yeah? The third was postgrad education. Now, postgrad education is a bit far from the world you're living in, probably. But I address you, and I think it is important that you know about the school's plans with respect to postgrad education, because this is the education we offer in terms of programs, seminars, to MBA students, to in-house company training, consultancy, and so on. And it's important, not only on that level, but this enriches the school in terms of bachelor and master programs and research as well. I'd very much like if we engage with companies and if we do executive trainings and if we have a lot of CFOs in the Netherlands that are alumni of our postgrad programs, I like to bring them back to class such that you can benefit from their learning. And their learning is part of your learning and your learning is part of their learning. And there's a wonderful set of opportunities that we can do. And by the way, as a Triple Crown accredited school, if we look at our peers and aspirants, this is an important core business that we should engage in because it will strengthen our international reputation as well. So this is why it's important to you as students, as active members of our community, because that's exactly what you are, members of that community. You're not seen as students and professors, you are seen and to be seen as active members of our community. So there was education, research, postgrad, and the fourth one, a very important one, if we want to be successful on all these core business areas, research on bachelor level, master level, postgrad level, and research, we can think that we can hire people coming from all over the world who are excellent in every four of these activities, which is impossible. Time consists of 8, and for most of us 10 or 11, even 12 working hours. We don't look at our watch, but you cannot spread your attention on 4 core activities, yeah, because then you lose specialization and you lose the energy to be excellent in that. And second, who says that the top researcher is the best bachelor teacher and the best master teacher and the best teacher if he or she is engaged with executives? This is not something you require of every single individual. So we need differentiated HR. Yeah, differentiated HR that is team competence based, and this is what we teach because you're not here to study. Study you can do on your own, in your room, either on basis of a blog book of Maastricht University or on a MOOC, or you can buy the book at Amazon and you can study because you're smart. But learning you do not do on your own. Learning is engagement, learning is co-creation, learning is sharing, learning is knowledge transfer, everything of that. That's the added value we as a school have to offer. Otherwise, we would rather say we close doors, we're a research institute and our students, or it's not even our students, they can find their way in other institutions or online. That's not what we believe. We believe that we learn together in active participation. Yeah? By the way, you need people, tutors, and you will see that that is a challenge, it will be an eternal challenge, who are willing, competent, apt to, enthusiastic, yeah, enough to engage with students to reach that level of learning. Because it requires a personal engagement from the tutor, from the teacher, but also from the student. But we'll analyze that later. So those were the 4 groups. What is the story? It's a story about creating dynamics. It's a story about capturing opportunities. It's a story about continuous improvement of our core business, research and education on different levels. It's a story about innovation, engagement, and impact. It's just about getting better, moving forward, living up to the expectations we have set, and realizing our own ambitions. So this is not a panic strategy of a school in distress. On the contrary, we are not in distress. We are perfectly geared, better than many others, to make higher education add more value in a new world. Because the world is also changing. Typically, corporate structures, big companies, they're fighting, they're looking for new organizational forms of learning, cross-learning, dynamic teams, multidisciplinary approaches, because the innovation in industry you will lead later on is built on crossovers. How can medical profession be enriched by science or physics? What can biology contribute to a better understanding of law or lawmaking? How can economics contribute? It's all about cross and multi and dynamic. The world is changing, and very rapidly. Yeah? And we are perfectly geared with our system, teaching, learning, smaller groups, interactive learning, engagement with students, active learning through thesis internship projects, studies abroad. We have done it. And it looks simple for you to study abroad, but no school does it as efficiently and as effectively and as rigorously as Maastricht University. Schools are looking, how do you do that? We'd like that as well, but we don't seem to be able to make this a compulsory study abroad. We do. We have been done. This is our internationalization pillar, so we're perfectly geared in the new world. But we have to do something. We cannot sit tight and remain and just, as effectively and as efficiently as we have been doing, run our factory like, I'm exaggerating here, this is not about factory of education. The factory of education is the negation, the saying no to what we really want to be. So I have to talk about our Maastricht University School of Business and Economics community. I have to talk about research, education, postgrad development, and differentiated HR. And I do so, which is already unique, because I have not seen or heard of a university who discusses these topics directly with students. Because students are seen either as customers, people who, they don't know everything yet. They've got so much to learn, so why would you talk to them or engage them on topics such as research, portfolio management, and education innovation, and pedagogy and didactics, and postgrad and differentiated HR? Students are just not interested. I don't believe that. I do believe that students are interested, because this is exactly what the strategic force, the student strategic force, has been thinking about and has been put on the agenda themselves. And again, we see you as active members of the community, so it's part of your responsibility to be interested in things you think you are not interested in. These things will be of interest. There is a message for students here. Maastricht University School of Business and Economics, we've celebrated our 30th anniversary, and that's a unique point on our life cycle, because that means that the founding fathers, the first professors, the builders of the school, have said goodbye or are about to say goodbye to the school after a 30-year-long career. So this means that there is an important switch. We leave the original blood leaves, the original insights leave. Yeah? The insights have evolved, they're dynamic. But this is a moment in time where a lot of key full professor positions are open for renewal, either internal or external. It is a critical moment of the school, and that's exactly the moment where you say, well, okay, let's rethink our mission and vision. Perhaps we should do something else. The good answer to this is no, we don't, because we have a perfectly actual and very ambitious mission and vision statement. So it is not about changing our mission and vision, it is about looking for structures and procedures and engagements and innovations that enable us to do better than what we have done before within the same construct of this is who we are, what we want to be. In the 30 years we have done an amazing thing. No school has done it in its 30 years of existence to become a Triple Crown accredited institution, with one exception, one of our partners in Lima, with Católica, a new university coming out of a bigger university with a lot of money established, the Lima, the Católica, the Centrum School of Business. They did it in close cooperation with us immediately from their start, and they're celebrating their 15th university, their 15th birthday now. But they, from the start, they said we're not starting from zero. We're starting with a partnership with a Maastricht School of Business and Economics and so on. It's a great achievement. Yeah. Who are we? We are essentially a community. And community is important for students because students have highlighted that, well, we can become a better community. Student community is important. We can improve on that. We don't always feel part of that community. We don't always feel part of the same organization as our professors. So if this is important, and it is also for accreditation purposes, we'll work on that. And we're focused on effective professionalism. We've got professional teachers, we've got professional researchers, and we want professional students or students who become real professionals in their personal careers. And that career is characterized by something the world calls for is responsible global leadership. We're an international university, we attract students with this international flavor, and if we listen to students, most of us, students, they want to be geared in pole position for an international career. That's what you want. That's why you probably, if I hear you right, that's why it's one of the reasons why you selected Maastricht University. So we'll have to make sure that you are indeed the responsible global leaders that we claim to deliver on the market. Our system is about not problem-based learning as such, It's perhaps solution-based learning because the problems we know, it's the solutions we're looking, but what we are focusing on is transformational learning. While you're here, while you learn, you transform. You do not only transform yourself, you transform your community, and you will be in a position to transform the businesses you will lead later on in your career who need transformation in a continuously changing world. So we have to focus on these dynamic transformational learning. And it's about the generation and the co-creation of ideas that advance, of course, scientific research and education, but also practice, adding value to society. And from a business and economics school, society consists of profit, not-for-profit organizations, but most of our students ends up in the business and the corporate world in leading positions. And that's part of society too. Yeah? An important part of society. So how can we make sure that you, coming from Maastricht School of Business and Economics, how can we ensure, maximize your potential to create value for society, either through corporate business world or not? This was the SBE student strategy team. Rendy, explain. He inserted some slides in my presentation.
Yeah, I added a picture because I didn't have a picture of the student strategy team, but the team worked hard on it. And afterwards we made a lot of mind maps. Pascal did a lot of work, Philip did. In the end, I helped out too. And out of all these mind maps and all these ideas from the student strategy team, we came up with 3 pillars, 3 topics that were very important. Education and research, extracurricular, and community. These were topics that students wanted to see more and better at the SBE. Education Research PBL was very important. Better PBL. I'll come back to that in a bit. The learning community is very important. We wanted to improve that. How do we share and how do we create as a community? And then coming to a community, it's not just students. It's students, employees, staff, alumni. We need to better allocate. Can you click?
I can.
We made analysis. I'll just go into a few details. We described nightmares, fails, dreams, and successes. And these are things that we would really like to avoid or see better at the SBE. For example, study abroad, you see in the top right, is a great success. You want to keep that. It's very important to us, and it's easy to achieve because it's already there. If you look at another value like tutor quality, which is a nightmare, people don't want to have worse tutors. So on this map, you basically see what we think is important and what we need to improve. Do you have anything to elaborate on that?
Oh, yeah, unless you want to do that, it's important. Those are two axes, and for you, in order to understand the picture here, this is the on a scale of 5, the student rating of how important the issues are. So 4.5. So 4 is absolutely top important. It's all relative, so it's relative scaling, but that's the importance. This here is the feasibility, meaning how easy is it for the school to avoid nightmares, to rectify fails, to continue successes or realize dreams. How easy is it? So if you're here, that's all very easy, relatively easy. The more you move to this side, the more you'll have to work on it, think about it. Really, it's not that easy. You have to commit resources to that. You have to take time. This will require an extra effort. This is almost effortless. This will require effort. Yeah? Now, the good thing is that most of the students, or the students, ranked most of the issues, yeah, on a line like this. And that's that's good news. Suppose it would be a line like this, then everything that is important for students is very difficult or almost impossible for the school to do, and everything that is easy for the school to do is utterly unimportant for the students. That would be a nightmare for the school's management. Yeah? So we're doing well. Second, if you have a concentration of nightmares here, that's a good thing. Suppose the concentration of nightmares was seen as very important. Wow. Yeah. So the picture here shows, rightfully so I think, truthfully reflecting that we are a good school. But every good school can be better, and every good school has its ambitions, and every good school student has even more, wants more out of the picture. As I said, study abroad, PBL employability, and these are things here that are seen as very important by students and fairly easy to do. But here there is one fail. And the students say, school, you should not accept that, because you can relatively easily do something about it, and that is community of students. Make sure that students have a stronger community feeling, or that they can organize themselves, students and tutors, as communities. And I am glad you highlight this, because this also reflects what is going on a much larger scale. Community is important. You'll see later on that community is important for small-scale education as a keurmerk, as a quality label. Yeah? And you will see that community is a strategic item on the agenda of EQUIS, the EQUIS accreditation, and of the AACSB. So if we want to remain accredited or seen as a top quality accredited school, we will have, together with these institutions, have to work on community of students. Here are two nightmares. Two nightmares. Yeah, the school has got to do something. It will not always be that easy, but it is still relatively easy to avoid these, and these have to do with tutor quality and internationalization at the cost of quality. Meaning that, yes, the students say, oh, we'd like to have more global students, non-EU students, but please do not lower the selection criteria. We do not want more international diversity at the cost of quality. But school, you have a good selection procedure, or you can even sharpen it, so it's not that difficult to avoid that nightmare. But it is important. Students feel that they see that the quality goes first. And hand in hand with internationalization, but not internationalization at the cost of quality. That's what you guys say, or your predecessors last year said. Tutor quality is very important for the school to avoid, given the structure of its educational system, is that the school should absolutely avoid the quality of tutors as we see it, as we perceive it, yeah, because they're all smart people, but we don't want the quality to lower. Now, this is exactly a challenge that is reflected also in the Elsevier rankings, because if we have #1 programs moving to a second position or sliding down a bit, it is because students fill in their surveys and mention that they sometimes do question or have problems with the quality of students, of tutors. And that's a big challenge for the school. We can do it. We're going to do it, yeah? But that's a challenge. And it's not about, are those tutors not smart enough? Are they not highly selected, either PhD candidates or assistant professors? No, it's not about that. It's about quality in the subjective way. Do they engage? Are they seen by students as part of the learning group in the tutorial class? Or are they just there to make sure that the assignments are made, the solutions come on the blackboard, distribute the solutions to the case, great, then go home and say, well, okay, please don't disturb me because I'm writing on my next paper, or I've got another class. It's perceived quality. Do our tutors engage in the learning as we see it, as we want it? Yeah? And that's something students gave us back, and I think rightfully so. Because this is key to our success. If we would fail in that, if we would fail to avoid that nightmare, one of our pillars is gone. So thank you, absolutely thank you for making sure that this remains on the visor of the school's leadership. Students also have dreams. A dream that the school should be much more effective and efficient, or much better in the collaboration with international companies. Yeah? Those who are very apt and effective in collaborating with international companies are many times our individual researchers who have research contacts. We do have a network of international companies. Our student associations, they have easy access to international companies. Look at the fairs, the job days you organize here. But it's still a dream by students, because once they look at their, let me say, day-to-day business of learning and studying and doing exams, they don't see enough of that collaboration, which is a challenge for us. And I think, again, this is a challenge that we as a Triple Crown accredited institution should put on the agenda in terms of continuous improvement. So yes, we make a strategic point about increasing and visibly increasing the collaboration with international companies. There are also successes here that we have to maintain because they're important. Yeah? That is, keep up the PBL system in the broad sense, yeah, and it's not about 12 or 13 students in class and with course books and so on, but the system, the way of learning, yeah, which we can improve, but it is still it's still there. It's an element of success, and the fact that we have a unique network of partner universities where we send our students to an international exchange. Yeah. Let's focus on a couple of the nightmares here, because they are important. Because they're important enough, they're more than average important, and they're a bit more difficult. So we'll have to be a bit more careful, spend a bit more resources, time, a bit more effort in doing this. This here is a nightmare, and that stands for no community. If we do not succeed in the community, yeah, building, yeah, then this will be a nightmare for most of the students. Yeah? Or if whatever we have in terms of community, if that would further deteriorate or be non-existent, that would be problematic for students. Yeah? What is also problematic for students, a nightmare hasn't happened, it's a bad dream, is that the market value of their degree would deteriorate, that the market would no longer recognize the value of being a student of Maastricht School of Business and Economics. Yeah? And they're worried about the market value because they're also worried about, and that's also a nightmare here, the value of the content value, the maturity of their degree, yeah, is not, or what they know and what they can do as students of our school, is not always reflected in the grades. And students, rightfully or wrongfully, told us this. Yeah? We learn a lot here. We're happy that we learn a lot here. Yeah? But if we end up with a 7 here, yeah, we know we are still better than an 8th grade student of Tilburg or Rotterdam, yeah? But the market does not always, or the value of the diploma, the degree, is not always reflected in our grade. Yeah? Now, you can do 2 things. You can give higher grades, but in a relative perspective that's inflation creation, or you can think about ways on how you can reflect the quality, yeah, in the grade, but also through other means, other kinds of certificates or whatever. Students often come to me and say, well, I've been very engaged in study associations, I did a lot of extracurricular activities, yeah, but at the end, I don't see this in my official papers. Can you do something about that? How can you valorize, making that a clear and reflected value? That's a challenge for the school. Yeah? There are legal boundaries, of course, but how can we do that? And I think there are ways to do that. Yeah? But this is something we have to do because if the value would absolutely not be reflected in the degree you hold, yeah, and the market value, because it's related, of course, yeah, does not reflect that, we have a problem. Low quality of research. Here is another important one. Is punish EC means that school, dean, you're absolutely right in saying that it's about personal development and that students should take the time and do some effort and do a lot of extracurricular activities, either in study associations or engagement in the Royals Cup, or a Heren or a Dames dispute, or whatever, or engage in projects in consultancy. Yeah? But your system, what you formally require of the students, seems to punish extracurricular activities. We don't have enough time to do so. Yeah? And this is something the school can think about, because if we value extracurricular activities, we need not per definition put them on a diploma or a degree and add a grade to it, yeah? But we should think or rethink on how we can introduce these extracurricular activities in the learning process, yeah? And how we could, for example, redefine the purpose of the tutor group. And instead of reducing it to, these were the assignments, this is the solution, do you all get it, do you understand it, are there questions, no questions, okay, goodbye, to the next time, to do something with it, or to relieve the pressure, because PBL pressure is also a nightmare, that the system puts so much pressure on the student, and not per definition in a constructive way. If students tell me that they have to study hard to learn a lot, they don't see that as pressure. They see pressure as a lot of activities that they do that are not really focused on the learning as such. That it is systematic, because students don't mind working hard. But they need to see result, or they need to see the goal, the purpose of working hard. And more than this you need to do to check a box or to have a high participation grade or whatever. You'll see that later on. Yeah? So there are some challenges. And yes, we can innovate our innovation system, and that's the strategic goal of the whole exercise that we are going to do. And we're going to implement some changes. That yes, you need to work hard, but the harder you work, you have a direct effect and a perceived effect of quality of your learning. And it does not stand in the way of your extracurricular activities, because there is an automatic link. You can become better, or you can become more interested in extracurricular activities, and If you're interested and active in extracurricular activities, you learn something that you can use in our more systematic pedagogy. That's a challenge. I don't have the right answer, but that's what we are going to work at together with students. That will be, we are going to reinstitute, because student generations, every year you've got a new bunch of students, more or less, yeah. So we're going to form a new strategic group, and you're all welcome. We'll do so through the student council to work on exactly these issues, yeah. And then we'll fine-tune that with education and innovation. Good. To conclude, Rendy.
Yeah, that was a great analysis. To conclude, what the student strategy team last year said is we want a strong theoretical background, which we have. At the SBE, you do get a very strong theoretical background. We want to have a more practical side. PBL offers us a lot of practical experience, as in you discuss a lot and you work with cases. But there should be more support for extracurricular activities, as Philip just very well explained. Community is very important, to have a better SBE community, to talk more with your peers, so that's also something we want to build on. And at the top of the pyramid, you see the SBE, which should make the picture complete. And basically that is, to conclude, what the student strategy team said last year and what we're going to work on this year, right?
Yep. Let me take you through, and the slides now are more detailed and cluttered. Don't mind the details. I'll go over this. I don't want to get into detail. I'll spend a bit more time on education, less on research and postgrad, because I know it's a bit further from your immediate field of attention, but it is important to mention it. But education. Innovation is the insurance against irrelevance, and I'm pretty sure that if we don't innovate and continuously innovate our educational system, we will end up with an irrelevant system of education that you too often see at classical universities, where you can study, you have exam questions of last year and you get a high grade, and okay, you've got your degree of a good school, but you miss out on the things we'd like to offer you. We'd like to focus on and get ready for the quality label small-scale education, small-scale accreditation. This means, and we're absolutely in pole position because our system PBL is very close, relatively close to small-scale education, that we need to invest in community and that we have to activate the student community to become also not only clients of the educational system, but also suppliers of the co-active learning, and take responsibility for your own learning process in a community setting. This means, and this is as a matter of summary of what came out of the education innovation team, is we have to sharpen the intended learning outcomes, and we have to strengthen the relationship between the goals and the instructional approaches. We do many things, yeah, that do not immediately lead to or are not perceived by students to lead to a particular goal. We have to be much clearer on that. We have to better communicate on that. We have to better communicate on that. We have to improve and innovate content, structure and didactic concept of the programs. You're in need of newer programs. You are in need of, students want more choice, of liberty of choice. So we are going to redesign the bachelor program, and we're going from broad to narrow, but we will always leave opportunities for students to say, well, hey, I took this course, no, I'm not going further into finance, but how can I not lose that kind of credit, or how can I leverage that, and how can I make another choice here? And that we can do because our system is not 100% content-driven only. Content is to be found on the internet and in books. It's about learning, and if you focus on the learning, you can offer your students a much more, if they have the potential and the intellectual potential to change, then the change might be a challenge, but students are willing to take that challenge, so offer them the opportunity to shift from the one to the other. I'm not saying that I want to end up as a kind of a UCM liberal arts college where you have free choice. By the way, you don't have that 100% free choice because there's a structure behind UCM as well. But I want to respond to students who say, well, hey, we're up for a challenge. Hey, we don't want to lose time. Study, I can buy and read a book. I want to do something here, and I want to move around. I want to move cross-disciplinary. I want to take courses possibly at other faculties, or I want other degrees, discipline represented here in the classroom at SBE courses. What does this mean for business education? Business education, we'd like to differentiate the programs in business, increase the coherence of the programs, innovate the classroom experience, and emphasize experiential learning. Now here we have to bring in the outside world for the experience, and we can do so. This is also why postgrad is important. The network of companies is important. This is how we can increase the collaboration with international companies. Bring the company inside the classroom, or even better, for a period of time, send you out with clear learning objectives to do something in cooperation with a company, and not just an internship and an internship report. Yeah? But how can we, it's a challenge, but this is where we will develop plans for, and we are geared to do that, and it's a challenge for every school. It's not easy to do, but I think this is also what the corporate world wants. Offer flexibility, technology in the classroom, collaborate with business, strengthen the research education, especially for the master programs. We are used to have tutorial groups of 2 hours. Who says we have to fill these 2 hours the way we have filled them up to this point? There is no law. There's custom. But you could say, well, okay, we're focused on the studying at home, or supported by movies kind of material. We are going to discuss actual problems here. Yeah? We're going to do something, and we are going to do much more than Chapter 7 and 8 on the agenda, questions, no questions, assignments, do you have the solutions, here are the solutions. This is how we do it now. I think we can do equally effective other things, but we need engagement of the student, and we need engagement of the tutor to engage in that kind of new experiential learning. We don't have the answer yet, but we will move towards more of these kinds of rethinking, innovating our educational structure. By the way, exam is part of assessment, it's not all. If you come here and you focus on your examination, yeah, then it's probably more effective, hypothesis, it's probably more effective to listen to former year students, to do some exercises, yeah, and to study at home. And this is exactly not enough for here, so we'd like to challenge you, invite you, have a strong appeal for you to come to class, because you are doing things there that you cannot do on your own, and that's the experiential learning. And that should leverage your potential to do a good exam as part of an assessment. And assessment is more than exam. Assessment is also reflect, give feedback to students on how they are doing, not only presenting, but what kind of leadership do you have. If we believe, the companies in the international companies, the corporate world, that it is not about, if you come from school, not so much about what you know, then your competence to look for a solution, and not on your own, but to activate the people around you to come with a solution for the company, then we will assess your leadership. Then part of your grade will be, or could be, determined by how did you help others to improve their grades. Yeah? And you're not doing something to improve the other's position, but while doing so, you're improving your own position, and you get feedback on leadership, and this global responsible leadership, experience learning. This is, again, a big challenge, but we are going to introduce these elements on the way. What does it mean for economics? From economics, we have to integrate new empirical evidence, discuss current topics and not only theoretical models. We'd like to have a more historical perspective, broader perspective on economics. Why do we have something as Marxist economics? Why didn't it survive? What did we learn from that? Is there still a message here? Although, and why only the neoclassical and things like that? The perspective, integrate, learn how to deal with data, more critical thinking about models and methodology, interdisciplinary approach, the application of the economic insights to medicine, biology, to day-to-day questions, That is what we'd like to focus on. And for econometrics, that's a great methodology course. It's a program still #1, but they'd like to increase access for business and economics students, and not only econometrics students, to courses in econometrics, coursework that brings students from different studies together. Because these econometric guys are desperately looking for problems to solve, because they have the methodology. And they are probably a bit over-focused on methodology, and they'd like to engage in activities that help other students improve their competence set. In terms of communication and assessment, it means absolutely that we have to improve communication between and the feedback to course coordinator, tutors and students, and this is in all directions. Improve communication among students, between students and tutors, coordinators, exam office. We have too much silly complaints about exams, or complaints that come too late, or that have never been discussed, or that could have been avoided by a better interaction in class. Yeah? Help us in doing that. Take your responsibility, because if your responsibility is, oh, I'm always going to complain, because if 9 out of 10 complaints, I have one grade from a 6.5 going to a 7, that's it for me. Yeah? But then, is that truly your responsibility? Is that truly what you would like the school to engage in? Because this is resources, this is use of resources, and I think we can do a much better job together with you in broadening assessment and in talking more, communicating more about exams. Redefine the nature and the purpose of assessment. Why do we have exams? If you don't understand why an exam is a good way or a bad way or a limited way to assess your learning, yeah, then you should make that a point of discussion in your tutorial groups. This is part of learning. How can we expect you to learn if you don't see that the metric of learning is a useful metric? Engage in that kind of stuff. Yeah? Quality of lectures and tutors. The role of the tutor and the tutorials will focus them more on applying knowledge, coaching skills, knowing how to involve students and make them better, instead of a focus solely on content and problems and solutions. Yeah? Increase the visibility of our assistant, associate and full professors in the classroom. You have a right to see your professors working with you. Something absolutely to be avoided is that you're a student of our system and that going through the 3 years of a bachelor you do not have or did not see a full professor or did not have a critical discussion on the things you were working with. So we're going to redefine step by step, broadening the goal, the purpose of being a tutor and working in tutorial groups. This means that we don't have to change the mission and the vision, but we are focused and geared on quality assurance of education, the choice of pedagogy, the didactic concepts, the tech support, the program portfolio of the school will be school's business. And this is something strange for you, or this might seem strange. Why is this a problem? Why is this on the slides? We see too many differences between fields in the approach of learning. Economics and econometrics and finance and accounting, they do it in different ways, and it's not always bad that there's difference. Yeah? But from the learning point of view, from this is studying at SBE is a school's responsibility. Yeah? And even within one course, you might see too many differences that the school cannot explain or does not do anything about between one course and 2 different tutors. Now, people are different, the chemistry in the group is different, but this should be part of the system, and we should know about that. We don't want differences that do not have a goal in itself. Yeah? So it is school business, and you'll see the Associate Dean of Education be more in charge of this process. Yeah? Research. We'd like to, and here I go a bit fast, we'd like to engage in broader teams, increase the impact and visibility, the relevance in an international and visible context. We'd like to focus on innovative solutions to problems that we can also bring to class. Yeah? It's all very well that our PhD students and our professors write articles, top journal articles for the peers, and that is an important thing for them to do because it means international reputation, peer recognition. But we can do more than that. We'd like to have the reason for this kind of research and the topics this kind of research, the problem it tries to solve, reflected in the education, the learning process. We'd like you to know more about the reason why we do research and to engage you in research, because you'll end up to writing a bachelor and of course a master thesis, which is research driven. These are the two long lists of minor interests. The slides are there, and you can ask if you're into that the strategic group. I'll share everything, but for the purpose of this discussion, because I'd like to open the discussion in a few minutes with you. Important is that we are going to focus on research quality, of course, but also on relevance of society and the viability and also the visibility of the research, with integrated relationships, a clear value proposition, differentiated specialized master programs and research master programs, and of course fields play an important role in this. Postgrad, as I said, is a wonderful part of the core business of the school that can contribute to a better experiential learning on bachelor and master level. So although it is further away from your actual life as students now, we'd like to use that postgrad, the company trainings, the MBAs, we'd like to use those students to bring experience in class, and why not? And this is just something we'll have to find out whether it's possible or not, but why not engage an MBA student in your education as part of his experience, or make him team up or help you out with a master thesis. You can use him, this could become part of his learning. We have to think more creatively in terms of this. What we know is that action learning in research setting, distinctive features, lifelong learning is crucial to our reputation, vital for our accreditation, and has lots of added value for the increase of collaboration with international companies, bringing experiences to class. Skip this. HRM I explained. We need good people who have the competencies, the skills to be top performers on postgrad, master, bachelor level, who are performing in terms of research, but we'll have to make sure that this happens on school or group level, and we need differentiated HR. I do not want somebody before you in the classroom who says, I am working on an article, on a deadline, research is my most important performance criteria, so please do not ask me too difficult questions, and by the way, I don't have time this week, come back next week. Although this could be perfectly understandable, and although we know and we will continue to make research a very important criteria for being a performing SBE colleague, this is not something you as students would like to hear when you have problems and when the guy or the girl in front of you in the class is supposed to help you on that. So if we put somebody before class, then his education task should be an equal important task of his performance, because it's not part of his performance, he or she is not going to perform, and you'll suffer from that. That just as an example. So we have to differentiate performance criteria and be very strict on them and go for high quality, and not be soft, but we have to think about this in a more strategic way. Good. This is more or less the structure that we have. We used to have a structure with a faculty board and departments and so on. We're going to make a bit changes, and we're going to say, well, okay, the biggest organizational and decision-making entities, groups of people in the organization, will be those who think about innovating bachelor education. And that is linked, of course, with master education and postgrad, but here we're going to put people together across disciplines who think and who have decision rights on this is how we're going to do it. And irrespective of the department you're from, this is what we're going to do it. Yeah? And this is how we're going to do it, and we're responsible for that, and we're going to resource the innovations in bachelor education. The same for the master programs, the same for the master programs that are linked with the research, a close link here, there is a looser link here, and with postgrad development. And these things are 3 core business layers. They're not separated from each other, because the fields, the departments go right through that. But that's probably of minor interest to students. But be assured that we're going to focus on and make decisions on and resource bachelor education, master education, research and postgrad education. And we are going to loosen the focus on the business units in the organization who are responsible and who will continue to be responsible for the operations. So we're going to align decision making and the products and services we stand for. Yeah? And leave out the intermediate part whenever it is putting stress on the relationship between decision rights and products. And of course we are going to keep them there if they're the crucial decision making for making it happen. But that's a bit of organizational theory. Now, change has positives and negatives. No change also has positives and negatives. Typically in change management, or what typical managers do, that they say, well, okay, I'm going to focus on the plus to convince you, and I'm going to focus on the minus of no change. I'm going to threaten you, make you fear if we do not change, then the world is coming to an end. And if we change, there is only the positive, the flowers you will see. That's not true, of course. With change, there are also negative sides, and there are always positive sides if you don't change. The change management is of course to make sure that the positives outweigh the minuses for the change, and that the change is needed because the plus of the no change is too small to outbalance the negatives. This is the urgency, this is the opportunity, but this is important for the people. Of course there is a positive of no change. Then nothing changes. I don't need to change. I don't have to make an extra effort. I know what is going to happen tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. But that is, from an individual point of view, a plus. It's comfort. Yeah? The negative here is that, if you don't change anything, we might see in the Elsevier rankings the programs go down. We might come into problems with the international accreditations, who will come to our institution and say, hey, how did you improve? What did you do over the last 4 years? And if you say, well, nothing special, business as usual, then they're going to say, well, the world improves, the world changes, you don't change. From an accreditation point of view, that's not a smart position you take here. Yeah? Of course it's about the opportunities, better education, involving students, delivering what students want. And of course there are the negatives, because the cheese will be moved. So, you come to the school every day, you do your things, people ask for a change, you don't change, and the cheese you're used to has disappeared. So it absolutely boils down to the question, where is my cheese? Yeah? Do you know the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Change management book. Who moved my cheese? If you move cheese, then there are smart people who say, I'm going to find out where the cheese is. And there are people who say, well, hey, somebody moved my cheese. It's no longer there. And I want to know who moved my cheese, instead of where is my cheese. Yeah? The where and is the negative choice of cheese. Yes, it's somewhere else. Where? Somewhere else. That's negative, because you have to move, look around, change a bit, adapt. That's the negative of no change, because there is no longer if we don't change. This is, what do I have to give up if we change? Because no change is something I know. My position is clear. It doesn't mean that people fear change, but they don't know what is going to happen to them. So that's a positive reflection. And it is about changing, you always do about, because there is the cheese. If the cheese wouldn't be there, if the cheese is here, then you don't change. Yeah? So where is my cheese? That's the question. And the only thing you need to convince the community of students and staff alike is that, yes, there will be cheese. Yes, there will be more cheese, but it's somewhere else. And let's find out where it is. And instead of asking yourself the question, who thought he or she had the right to move the cheese? Yeah? So progress is impossible without change. Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Life at SBE, if you focus on your core business, is really simple. We know what to do. But sometimes we insist on making it so difficult. Students, you could make your own life difficult too. Yeah? Sometimes it can be very simple, but that's human behavior. Why make it difficult where it shouldn't be that difficult if you just look at it from the other side? If we keep facing the sunshine, we are never bothered by the shadows. So don't look at the shadows. Of course, I stands for the school, and I represent the school here, we really count on you. First, you have given us input. Second, you will continue to give us input. Third, you are agents of change. You are a Dean's life insurance. You are the pressure, the innovation, the thoughts, the renewal that the Dean needs to hear to say, hey, I want to change because students want to change. If there is no input from students, yeah, then I cannot convince my organization that we need to do things differently. Yeah? So please remain to be that input of change. In your student council, in your faculty council, in your strategy group, please be the motor, the driver of change in a very constructive way. And take responsibility here because you're active members of the community. Of course, I also count on my young faculty. They're not used to old-fashioned systems. They see their career and they want to change because the cheese will be there for their careers. It's much more difficult, and it's no blame, it's much more difficult to ask a professor of 62 to change. Don't ask him to change. Ask him to help other people change, but the change for him is less important. And for most of them it's still important because they have a heart for the school, but use them to help others achieve their targets. It's life cycle thinking as well. Yeah? But the young faculty, it's for them that we do it, and it's their analysis. I also want to count on, and do count on, the support staff. Those are the guys and the girls who make it all happen. And they are the core, the heart of the school, because they don't have departments, they don't have fields, they don't belong to accounting instead of finance. They are here for all of us, for you. These are your study advisors, the HR people. Yeah? They make it happen. I want to see them as equal partners in education. They are open and willing to engage with you. I think we have great study advisors. Yeah? They're open to you, but please, you have responsibility towards them as well. A responsibility of courtesy, a responsibility of respectful behavior, and a responsibility to clearly discuss your problems because they're there to help and they really want to help. And if we start doing what is necessary and then try to do what is possible, at the end we will find out that what we are doing is exactly what we thought to be impossible. Also for you, my dear students, impossible, that's a word that doesn't really exist. I'm possible, or at least I try to make it possible. I'm making it possible. That's the nutshell, the core of the strategic renewal of this school, and it heavily builds on what you students have given us, and it will continue. It will continue to be built on what you are and continue to give us, because we need a next strategic team, and please get engaged. Questions? Reactions? Fears? Thank you. So do you recognize this? How do you want to contribute? Where did I leave out something? The floor is yours. Yes?
What is the role of the study association in the new strategy of SBE?
Rendy, could you answer that? I have an answer, but could you engage as well?
Wait, could you repeat it?
The role of the study associations in the new strategy.
What is the role of the study associations in the renewed strategy of SBE?
Study associations are very important, especially community building. I think to build a community, to work together closer with the faculty, to be more interrelated in the departments, to improve education, to improve career events. Actually, all aspects that we thought that is important is also partly responsible for the study associations. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to add something. You're more important than you realize. Whenever we have international accreditations, we are proud, and we are extremely thankful to be able to show those AACSB or EQUIS accreditors the things you do as study associations on great scale and on a high quality. Because if we would leave out these kinds of activities in our report, AACSB and EQUIS would ask us, what is the school itself doing about that? And we have been absolutely smart, and we have been specializing in having study associations who take care of job fairs, employability, what you do, the kinds of activities you do, one-on-one, appear in our self-assessment evaluations. And we are often congratulated by AACSB and EQUIS for having so active and focused study associations. So you're crucial. You're agents of change. You bring to us more than you realize company context networks. We can still do better by engaging more with the student associations and among the different study associations in connecting and bringing together that network and being even more effective. But the nut is there, the core is there. What you are doing is invaluable for the school.
All right, well, the question I would have is, if these study associations are this valuable, how can SBE itself really make the most of the cooperation and further improve this cooperation and communication between the two parties?
Maybe to repeat it, the question is, after that important, how can we improve the cooperation between study associations and the SBE, right?
You start, I start?
Start off?
I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You wanted to start, right?
No.
Just continue the answer.
No. No. To start with the joke, I would have loved me asking the question, you giving me the answer. Meaning that this is a two-way communication and a two-way strategy. We have, over the last years, we have been restructuring scope and the scope associations. This has not been easy, because you come out of a world where scope, the Vectum and the 3MA and the Focus guys, they had their own sponsors and their own networks and their own activities, and now we'd like to, and we have succeeded in doing that, but it's not the end of the road yet. We have said, okay, but guys, if we can make sure that we can take away the fear of cannibalization, that sharing your companies as sponsors does not diminish the kind of money you get for your econometrics or finance accounting kind of activities, yeah, then we can identify the synergies. And I take my hat off, because we have already moved to a point where the study associations have a control body and they share their network. Because for exactly the same reason as I told the joke later on, I didn't tell you here, I think. Once I had a call, and I said, well, from a company, I think it was Vodafone, but that's not important. They said, well, like, this morning I had people from your faculty, Mr. Dean, and they said they were from finance, and they came with a proposal, a 2-day training program on risk management, financial risk management, and they named a price per person and a content of the program. And this afternoon I had people and they came from your university as well, or am I mistaken? Was this Maastricht School of Management? I don't think. No, they said they were from the university, and they were from an accounting department, also with a plan on risk on risk management, but with completely different content, and that's perhaps okay, but with completely different prices. Now, I'm interested in those guys and in those programs, but whom can I talk to? And those two departments, they didn't know that from each other. We had the same with the study associations. Vectum goes to a company, Focus goes to a company, and the company says, you're students of Maastricht. I just gave my money, I sponsored. Yeah? So this is what we realized. Yeah? Companies are willing to help students, yeah? But they are not willing to help first the finance students and then the accounting students. They call me and they say, well, why don't you get your students organized better? I could even give me more money, more synergy. I can help them and give them advice, but if they continue to do that, we're not going to do that. It's too fragmented. Yeah? And that was the power of bringing associations together. And you compare your study associations with my departments. The same issues. Yeah? But if you want to innovate and if you want to change, you have to get together as SBE. It's part of community. You've got sub-communities. So yes, we're in this together. But we're making moves, and those of you who are engaged in study associations or the control body are happily, please join. Because yes, it's real life. Yes, it's tension. Yes, it's plus and minus. Yes, it's striking a balance. Yes, it's making a deal, because there is no automatic answer. Yeah. But we have to do it.
I don't have a lot to add to that. Work together, transparency.
Yep.
Look for our weaknesses and bundle our strengths. Both faculty and association side. We also had a couple of questions online. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Follow up on it.
Well, I totally agree that collaboration and cooperation between the different study associations is really important. My question was really directed towards the cooperation between SBE and the study associations.
Yep.
And I think that was not really answered there.
Okay, but we closely work together. We have the control body. We support the study associations. We discuss with them how what they're doing can be part of the learning experience. It's our job to make them work with fields, with departments, and we can always improve, of course, but they have, study associations have a very active role in what SBE is and is doing. But the mere fact that you ask the question means that we can improve. And that we have to improve.
Yeah, well.
There were questions? Yeah.
There were some questions that were asked online. One was linking to the innovation of critical thinking. Mm-hmm. It was, to which extent is critical thinking part of the improvement? Are there alternative ways discussed how to stimulate creative critical thinking that go beyond cognitive approaches?
Yes, absolutely. So there is going to be more room, and has to do with changing the purpose of and how do you fill the time that you're together. But critical thinking is, from an academic institution, the base. Yes, it's all geared, we're all geared in the innovative process to bring experiential learning, critical thinking, the co-creation, instead of, well, the only critical thinking you can do here is to come up with a solution to this particular problem. Yeah, that's not the critical thinking we want. We would like to have more room for discussion and say, well, how does this apply to a new lab? How can this enrich my experience? And by the way, I've done an internship at that company. We've seen exactly the same problem here, but they solved it in a completely different way. What kind of reasoning is behind it? Because I don't like that kind of model. I've seen something different in my job during the vacation or whatever. That's the kind of thing that should be core to the learning. We'll bring it back to class, yes.
Okay, thank you. And a second question was regarding to the grading of SBE, which was shouldn't we be more worried about deflation rather than inflation? Because isn't this damaging for students that would like to join top master degrees at other institutions?
Yes, but the analysis shows that if there is a tendency, it's a tendency of grading upwards and not downwards. Now, I fully understand not only the individual position. What I am afraid of is that I should be able to grade with respect and in comparison with the grading systems that the students have that are competitors on the market. And if the students you compare with, coming from good institutions, yeah, have a 9 out of 10, whereas the 9 out of 10 is equally translatable with us as a 7 out of 10, you have a misperception. So that is something I do not want to happen. Yeah? but I do not want to give everybody a 9 just for the sake of, okay, then they're on par with the 9 of other institutions. But that's a difficult one. Our accreditation officers and the peer review teams, they are more worried about the continuous pressure in all schools, also with ours, detectable in ours, to grade higher and higher and higher instead of lower and lower and lower. But I see the problem. If others inflate more than we do, it might create a problem. Yeah? But yeah, how do you fight that kind of inflation? And I think we can do much more and much more effective things to make sure that the world understands the value of your diploma, your degree, than by merely inflate that kind of a grade.
Philip,
it's
can
an
I
issue.
add?
Yes?
Can I add to that?
Yep.
So,
yep.
as somebody who writes a lot of recommendation letters and deals with a lot of these online systems for top schools, for students from here who want to go there, this is actually, to a large extent, an irrelevant discussion and at the same time highly relevant. So let me first explain why it's irrelevant. Because when you apply at a top school, the level of your grade, your average grade, actually is not important at all in that process. So that's why it's irrelevant. Now, why is it highly relevant? Because what they are going to ask is, where did you get your bachelor? So that's why we are here now, because the level of all of us and the level of Maastricht University actually matters for your chances of getting in. Secondly, what matters is, how good are you compared to your peers that are in the classroom? And thirdly, quite frankly, is how good is the relationship that you have with your professor, because your professor needs to write you a stellar recommendation to get you in.
Yeah.
And those three things matter, but whether you have an average grade of 8 or 9 compared to somebody from a totally different school, they're not even going to compare like that. It doesn't work like that.
But the fact that it is a worry of the students and it is perceived as a problem is something we can talk about, communicate, solve, and be very creative on. Yeah, but you're right. Yes.
Yeah, I would have a question because you had it in the graph, the point with the international students and the quality.
Yep.
And I think it's a really important topic for university, but I'd be interested in how you address that problem because, I mean, it's no secret that there are a lot of German students and that university probably works in the direction of international students or international atmosphere, but keeping the quality.
Now, we've been spoiled by the German students because there's a different selection mechanism. If a German student, and especially nowadays when the tuition fee in Germany is 0, if a German student chooses to study here in Maastricht, he or she self-selects. And we have the proof on paper, very hard, that it is a positive self-selection of German students. So that the best students, or the better students, and of course it's sometimes also correlated with the financial background or the family background, and that's another challenge, but leave that aside, that we have a positive pre-selection of German students. So we are very happy with that. Yeah? The fact in a truly international global school, you shouldn't even count passports. It's irrelevant where you came from, as long as you have that openness and that you are equally attractive to German as to Spanish and Italian students. To come to your point, the analysis of the uitval, so the success rate in first year bachelor, and there's the challenge, bachelor, master, we have many more tools for selection because we can at least ask where do you get your bachelor from and what's your relative position. But for the bachelor, of course, we have a selection process, and important, and don't forget that is the same, what kind of school are you from? And if you're a Dutch-speaking Belgium, but you did your studies in a French-speaking school in Liège, that's already something that is positively valued in selection. Your motivation, the use of English is important, how you see your future. But there is little, it's very difficult for us to find the selection criteria. And sometimes you have to believe in the self-selection, and typically it works. Marcus, you're from Estonia? Estonia. How did you end up here? Why and how? Because that's a relatively new market or an exotic market, not in terms of temperature, right? It's not exotic out there, but...
Well, yes, firstly, I did have quite a close look at the rankings
August, I kind of narrowed it down to Maastricht. I knew some people who are studying here already. I met up with them. They told me about the PBL, how it works, how actually the tutors already are really engaged and really make this a wonderful experience. And so because of basically because of those recommendations and also this triple accreditation, the international outlook, career prospects, then I thought this really is a great.
And what do you think was decisive in the selection process of our school to say yes to Margus? What do you think have the feeling of that was a decisive factor? How do you see that?
You mean when the admissions officer
Yes.
at Maastricht
Yes.
considered my application?
Yes.
Okay. Well, probably. Well, perhaps. Well, in that sense, perhaps I was a bit different from the other applicants because I already attended college back in Estonia for 1.5 years. So I had a transcript, I already had recommendations, so I kind of had this track record already. I don't know if that was that relevant.
That's probably, yeah.
Yeah, but also I did pay a lot of attention to the essay questions and motivation letter and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, but perhaps really because I just had those grades already out there.
Yeah. Show that you travel, the number of languages you speak or you want to speak or you've got affinity with are things you can stress. But from a school's point of view, there is not much more to go on if you're selecting bachelors. So it's based on motivation letters. It's based on sometimes also gut feeling. If we have information on your secondary school or the country, or if we have a feeling that that you show that you speak more languages, that you've traveled, or that you did that you were an au pair girl in France or whatever. What did you do in your holidays, vacations? It's difficult.
Actually, if I may, as we are already talking about this internationalization, one comment also about the community and building this student spirit and everything. We have this organizational policy of lingua franca, everybody speaks English in tutorials, and it is, of course, very much espoused. In every first tutorial session, the tutor goes over this. But to be honest, sometimes I don't really see it being enacted. As, of course, the educational learning is always in English, but like the breaks and when you arrive in the tutorial room early, then it always gets down to French and all the languages that we have. So I'm just wondering, maybe if this lingua franca would be implemented a bit more thoroughly, maybe that would also contribute to the community and to a closer feeling.
Isn't it also a matter of diversity to hear during breaks and in personal other languages? I'm not sure on this. I'm in doubt. I don't have the answer. But I've got mixed feelings about this. I don't worry too much if I walk through the corridors to hear 4 or 5 languages. I think it's enriching the school in its own proper way, but I'm not sure how I could say yes or no to that. I very mixed feelings. Jaap, what's your feeling about that? Jaap is the department chair of finance.
We were not one of those companies, by the way, in the Vodafone case. Since I have the microphone, I will point out. What's my feeling? I agree, actually, with him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
More rigorous approach?
Yeah, I think that...
let's discuss that in the
So
group.
it bothers me also internally if we get an email and first is the Dutch and second is the English, which sometimes is still the case. I think it should always be the other way around.
Okay. Yeah.
And also the fact that if you have a meeting and if there's even one person who's not a native Dutch speaker, for example, and even if that person speaks some Dutch,
no, you go
I don't
to
think
English.
I don't think we should be asking, shall we do this in Dutch? No, it should not be a question. And it's
Correct.
the same thing
Okay.
with Germans or with anybody actually. So
Yeah, but here
I
you're
agree.
talking of course about official email communication, addressing people, but in kind of the private conversation or in the group.
Well, there's a reason why they call it lingua franca, right? I mean, the name already says it. So
Yeah.
I would agree.
Okay. You were referring to tutorials? Oh, no. That's an absolutely no-go. In the tutorials, the language is English. Yeah? Point final. Point final. Philip.
Thank you. I must say, I'm really happy to see that so much of the input we gave in the strategy team is really valued here, and yeah, I hope you're going to keep it up.
Depends on, it shows the quality of the input, of course.
Thank you. I have more of a technical, practical question. So, how, or maybe asked differently, are you actually going to devote additional resources to the strategy process we are undergoing right now? Or is it going to be managed within our resources we have already in the administrative form of the organization? And what would be the next practical steps in the strategy process?
Good questions. What kind of resources are we going to use? Resources are always limited. That's why it's an economic problem. But we do have the executive board. Part of the strategy is aimed at new streams of resources, either through research channels, or CANIS-US, or innovation in education, where the university has kind of, they call it a panel, where we can submit strategic initiatives and get some extra funding. So it's a combination of reallocating existing resources, probably also investing or dare to invest resources that are now in reserves, wherever they are. So invest in the future, but in a very smart and performance-driven and targeted way, and of new resources. How are we going to do it? Well, the way we're going to do it is we'll have, of course, task forces now that are responsible for implementation, and here communication is also key. Not only communication within the teams, but also communications that combine old and new, because you're looking for a way to for a smooth transition. So key here is that we'll have a team under the leadership of the Associate Dean of Education on the Bachelor. The Dean of Research, Peter Schotman, he's here. He will lead the innovation on research, and that in combination also with the master programs. And of course the Associate Dean of Education is also responsible for the master. But we'll have teams. We'll also have teams on GSBE, the graduate school level. They have their director, they have their directors of the research master program. So we're going to engage and activate everybody with a task function in the organization, but we'll put them in teams according to the core business, postgrad, master, bachelor, research. And then we have to coordinate and communicate within the teams, and the departments and the department chairs, of course. There will be also a very important platform to discuss this with them, because they'll see the links, and we'll discuss also how we're going to organize, structurize, and structure follows strategy, how we're going to put into structure the stable revenue flows, how we're going to resource in a longer and stable form every of the initiatives. But in the beginning, we will absolutely finance the first initiatives, out of the system, but be very careful that you do not destabilize the ongoing operations. So that will be a challenge, of course, but that's part of the change management. But we'll work with project teams on bachelor, master, research, and postgrad.
Okay, so coming back to the.
And students will be part of that team, of all teams. Because we're going to engage student and student council.
Sorry, just a short follow-up question. So I was interested whether you're going to initiate this change process now as a one-time project. So we are now under the strategy renewal, and when this is over, we are going to be basically with our new strategy, and we're going to pursue that. Or are you planning, or are you also thinking about integrating mechanisms in our system in our faculty to basically continue the innovation process? And how could these look like?
Yeah, the new kind of structure that we'll have for example, take again bachelor, will be a structure where the people responsible for the tasks in coordination with all the fields will have targets on continuous improvement and continuous innovation, of course. We're going to try to institutionalize change. Yeah? But that's a challenge, of course, because an organization always needs enough stability to be creative, but not too much of the stability, and that was a discussion we had earlier on today with the department chairs, not overly stable, because then we do not need to be that creative. That's looking for a balance. It'll not be easy. Absolutely not. But who says it will be easy?
I actually have one comment and one question. I am personally in favor of the lingua franca, and it's not because students often make a valid point that if you are only with, for example, German students or Dutch students, to just speak that language, but that does not invite other students to join that conversation. And I think that's especially the problem.
Yep.
I had one question because you told us that you would like economic students to join econometrics courses. But will also something change the other way around? Because right now econometrics is really closed and there's not a lot to choose during courses during the bachelor. So will that also happen?
Bachelor director or associate dean education?
We are now in a process, in different processes. The first is until between now and roughly Christmas, we are thinking on how to manage this, how to create these processes.
How to set up the teams,
etc. And that will be until roughly on the Christmas, and then from Christmas until the summer, we are working on these teams, and we are developing these programs and how it will fit into our new structures, also in new bachelor programs, master programs, etc. And then from there on, we're going to really implement it. It will be in steps. And one of the issues is, and that's still not clear, how the new bachelor programs will look like. So we have some blueprints. We have various formats. I think at the moment we have even 6 or 7 different views on how bachelor programs will look like. And first we have to develop these, and then of course to discuss them again with students, with stakeholders from the departments, etc., from all levels, to see what is feasible, what solves what issues, what comes to what other issues about community building, about employability, about social responsibility, and all these issues which are raised already also today, but also from the students groups, how we can include them. So that's not. I don't have the answer yet. But we are thinking on these issues, and of course they are very important to put into some sort of perspective, and to see the pros and the cons, and what we will win and not, etc.
But it is indeed one of the challenges, is how to continue to allow students who have got a very clear mind and say, I want to become an econometrician, and so on, and it's a tough program in order to flow into the master and be a successful master student. Yeah, you have to have a lot of econometrics courses in the bachelor, and still, how do you balance that with, hey, you can open up if a student wants to take other courses. Why wouldn't he or she be allowed to do that? And that's part of the design, of course. Now you take one of the most specific educational programs. Another very specific educational program is that if you would like to start accounting because you want to end up as a registered accountant on the most effective way possible, then you don't have too much choice, because the bachelor clicks into the master into the RA, the registered accountant, and so on. And yet that requires time, but not every accounting student wants to be or on the direct line to registered accountant. So how do you balance of degrees of freedom, openness, closing down again, joining other, and still do not keep you away from the track you set out for yourself? So 3 years plus 1 is 3 years plus 1, eh? But that's a challenge. But in essence, I would say it's a student's decision right. But as long as we're clear that if you do that, you might need another half a year before you can successfully get into the master or to help you out, that's something a school needs to tell you. That's our responsibility. Yeah.
Actually, it's right to follow some courses of finance during the econometrics program, and that actually turned out to be impossible.
So you wanted to follow finance courses, smart choice. As an econometrics student, well, that's a challenge, yeah, because exactly on research master level, finance and econometrics are relatively close together. So that's indeed a challenge. Yeah, I don't have an answer why it wouldn't be possible. There probably arguments for that, but I don't see an immediate problem. Jaap, what is your immediate reaction? You've got econometrics students. Yeah. Me neither. No, no.
I actually even think that you're losing quite some econometrics students to Rotterdam because of this reason.
Aha, and that's not what we want, eh? Yeah. No, but again, this is another story that tells us that we should rethink the bachelor structure, and this is yet another reason why we should involve students in this strategic process as well. Otherwise, we think too much inside out. And I can imagine that it probably has to do with knowing the schools and knowing how we allocate resources. That is, that there is possibly a fear of the one field losing students to the others, whereas a school you gain better students. So this is kind of the things we'll have to resolve. I think this might be one of the disadvantages of not having a clear view on and decision rights on what students are allowed to do across fields. But that's a good point, Jaap. And we don't want to lose to Rotterdam, eh? Students to Rotterdam. No. By the way, is there a university in Rotterdam? Oh, yeah, Erasmus. Sorry. Oh,
Okay.
it's live. Woo! Sorry, Rotterdam.
Okay, so I actually wanted to ask, because I think there's a lot more to community than just the lingua franca. We saw in the presentation that this is very crucial to have a good community to students. However, of course, the community, there's also not only the students, it's the whole university, right? Mm-hmm. And I was wondering what your actual plans are to have a better community, because I think many people here agree that right now it's rather fragmented than it is together. So.
Mm-hmm. In the narrow sense, I'll give you the floor. In the narrow sense, I think community is part of, and we have to translate that, and there are ideas out there, but community is part of either tool and goal, by the way, both tool and goal of a learning experience. So community is important, especially for small-scale accreditation. Yeah? Because the fact that you have a community increases the possibility of successful co-creation, of successful sharing. And I'm talking about community as a school's task. You belong to different communities. A study association is a community. A herendispute is a community. A sports club is a community. But we feel responsible for the community. As a school, we feel responsible for the community and the communities you need to stimulate and to optimize learning. Yeah? So that's the narrow part. Second, students themselves are active architects of these kinds of communities. And I do not want, because that's not the philosophy of the school, I don't want closed communities. I also like a community on the UM level, and we are discussing also with other faculties the exchange of courses, or joining courses of other faculties, or bringing other faculties to class, and making your community as SBE students part of bigger communities. But on our agenda as a school is the role community plays in advancing the learning, the experiential learning. So that's a relatively narrow definition. Now, could you elaborate a bit, Huub, on community from a small-scale perspective? And why community is important?
Yeah, communities are important for various reasons. One of the reasons is, I think, that's also adding to the lingua franca issue, is that we think, and that's also what's coming out of the student groups, the strategy groups, is that students, of course, they need to feel at home also here. They want to recognize their peers in Maastricht, and they want to have some sort of a smaller community. They know people, and they are part of that, and they really feel therefore at home. And I think that's also the why we promote the lingua franca so much in the international classroom, is that we want to let people feel at home, students feel at home. And of course, that does not mean that every sentence has to be in English. But on the other hand, I think that if you also as students alert that you're outside of a community and not getting into the community because of the language, I think there we have an issue, and we should really discuss this, because I think that's very important. Coming back to the ideas which are now on communities, is that we are thinking of creating these smaller communities within the school of, let's say, 75, 80, 90, 100 students, so roughly these kind of sizes, to work together with these communities on projects which come from their, let's say, the communities, the broader Maastricht community, the region, to work on social responsibility issues, to work together as a group, to also have, for instance, the tutorial groups are not mixed among all, let's say, IB students, but within these 100 students, so that you see your peers more often, the same peers more often, so that you create this community feeling much more in our school. And even if we have a large number of students, that you still feel at home, and you still recognize and have these smaller communities. So that's a practical point we are thinking on. And again, this has to be discussed and has to be developed further, and this is not yet set in stone, for sure not. So we have to develop it and also discuss it with the students. Is that a little bit answering?
Maybe to add a bit to that too, we keep involving students more and more also in the governance of the faculty. The common room that we're building is completely ruled by students. All input is taken into account, and in the end these designs are made by students, and you see it in the strategy team too. So students get more and more input, so that's also how we hope to create more of a community feeling.
So I can actually directly relate to that. So I really liked that first graph almost that you had with the different things, and I think that it very correctly shows what is important right now. But it seems to me that creating this took a lot of effort.
Yep.
It took a lot of creating this task force, a lot of this and that, and my impression is that there's so much more potential for dynamic change in this faculty. I feel like there are so many ideas at different points, and once the student manages to communicate it to the student council, then maybe the student council can bring it into the program committee, and then but it's stuck at one point. And when an exchange student has feedback about a course, and I work at the RO myself, and I see feedback from a student about a certain course, then I'm not too forwarded to the course coordinator. So it seems like there's a lot of potential in this university or faculty for change, but it doesn't go through. There's be it on a horizontal level between faculties, between departments, between study associations, but also vertically. How can we in this faculty create these dynamics for change? And you said institutionalizing. That sounds exactly right, but that seems like a huge task.
Yep. It is a huge task. By the way, the students and the staff members who contributed to a year-long work on these task forces did so based on their own decision. The groups were open and in their own free time. There was no extra compensation or incentive. So that already shows that the willingness and the resources are there, and sometimes resources can be free. And these resources were free. Second, it's an ongoing issue. We have a student council and we have a faculty council, we have a control body, we have the study associations. It's also about taking your responsibility and speak out, and not be the student who, if he or she speaks out, it's about complaining about an exam. Yeah, so there is also a positive, and there are many ways to do so. Not only is my door open, you have your study advisor here, and that guy is paid for doing what, it's a hell of a job, but that guy gets some support, and we have studiemaanden as well, of course, for people taking up, but it's an ongoing issue, and yes, this is exactly why communication, yeah, and the way we communicate is on the agenda. But my guess is that it will always be on the agenda. That you do not have kind of an end point for now we have institutionalized. It will always be on the agenda. It's an ongoing issue. But I am absolutely not negative, because what I see happening here at this school, the fact that students had a strategy team group, the fact that there is a dean having a presentation even streamed where students are active and not only as listeners but also as input delivers, I have not seen yet or not heard stories yet of any business school or university that has the courage or the idea or made that happen. Every school has got students and groups of students, but the extent to which we can discuss, agree and disagree with each other, the extent to which and the way how students take responsibility here, the degrees they have to fill in that responsibility, yeah, through either study association is amazing. That's what other schools say. How does this work? What are you doing there? And that's something amazing, because I have yet to see this kind of engagement, yeah? Active engagement, open engagement, on paper, discussed with the executive board, the active contribution, the input given by students, and made this one-on-one part of a strategic team, without any influence, without any fear. The observant was here, still here? No, they went. They're all here, yeah? So that is something we see as natural, yeah? But there are not too many German universities or Belgian or French universities that do that. Show me. Not even American universities. Show me. So it is there, and the fact that it is so open and everything is possible might also mean that the channels are perhaps less limited or clearly defined, but it's there, and yes, we can do a better job. But the fact that it's here is amazing, and the fact that I'm allowed to talk to you and that you're still here and listening and engaging. And then Philip says, "Well, thank you for taking up everything we put down on paper on an official strategic renewal." Tell me a school who does that.
Could we make it a more transparent maybe? I mean,
sure.
Yeah, because I think it's only a few people here actually who are willing to come, but I think there's a lack of information flow, as also Constantine said. So it would be better if
well, think about the channels. Think about the channels, because we do have a newsletter and we do have the student council, and we can put everything, and we do have kind of movies. We now have even Rendy's Paradise, yeah? Which is a great tool. So be innovative and help us in one idea that if we are going to roll out or think about a marketing strategy and a communication strategy to students, yeah? Whom better to listen to than those who will be listening to your message? You know the challenge, you know the words, you know the phrases, you know the what you need to make your message clear. So in that sense, you will be our resources. And yes, we trust in the quality of our students, and we give them that degrees of freedom. And of course we're responsible, and of course we resource, and of course we'll add a professional expert to the team. But theoretically, there is no better marketing and communication if it goes to students. A company is something else, perhaps, than a students team. What students have done here with their libdubs, a couple of years ago, with LibDub, with the movies they make. That's phenomenal.
Where would you like to see more transparency?
I think it's kind of hard also for first-year students, actually, that they know that we have a student council, so that we just be more transparent for the upcoming students in order to get them the chance to engage actually in student councils and other activities. Yeah, I don't know, like maybe I have no real idea right now, but I think that would be one point where I would start thinking.
Think with us. Yep.
Necessarily a matter of transparency or information, because the information is there if you look for it, you know, and I think it's quite transparent. The problem is we have to remember not everybody cares as much as we might do, you know, which then again is a community problem, because if you take pride and if you continuously want to improve, then that is a whole nother story, you know, and that's why I think that's a very important topic. Like
but there'll always be self-selection, and be glad of that, because you have the opportunity to self-select as well. Second, I would not only limit this to the school here, but also to the university. The idea and the project team on the UM's the student portal, where the fundamental idea is we want to work for the student, and the students did it themselves, the design and so on, and we're going to roll this out on university level. We want a one website. It's not even anymore a website, but it's accessible on every single device, you can say, and if we click, we have our deadlines, we have our courses, we can, and that kind of thing. The University of Maastricht, and that's on central university level, engage students, and again, I've yet to see a university that does that. And communication, as I said, it will always be an issue, but don't forget, it's always about self-selection. You'll never get the 100% of students engaged in the same way.
Which once again shows the fragmentation of the whole community, because what I notice now, and I think many people do, is how many information is pointed towards you. You know, I get Talking Business, I get about SBE, I get Rendy's Paradise. So, you know, and that really shows, you know, how fragmented and decentralized, which is in general good, but like it seems that there is no community, no entity within so many things. And we actually were sitting together before and talked about it, that this needs to be unified, and the only way to do that is really looking from the top down and seeing what's happening, you know, that because. Yeah, I feel like now it's just like new things are popping up and great ideas, you know, but like they're not integrated within each other. That then you end up having.
But that's you're absolutely right. But that's again why I'm convinced that it will always be on the agenda, and it'll go from the left to the right, and integrating, and then again new initiatives from decentral. But as long as it's about connect. And it's also about, I want to get communicated to, I want to know. And there's also a search, of course. If you just wait until somebody tells you or communicates to you what you are at that stage, but yeah, it's one of the most difficult things, even inside the, also from a faculty board to your departments, to your student council. The communication is it's a terribly difficult issue.
Yeah, I really like the emphasis which is now put on the point of communication, because also when we talk among people who basically in the student council thought about change in this faculty, then the topic of communication comes up very often. And well, what I think you have to understand is that, I mean, I think that is something everybody understands here, that we are in a very, very complex institution here. and that many things happen at the same time. And that while you come up with a problem, or you think that something is a problem, somebody else in this building might be already working on it without you knowing that this is happening. So I think it would be really, really effective if we could set up more efficient communication, in the sense that the people who are interested in something actually find out about it faster than they do right now.
Yeah. Multi-channel, multi-mode. Yep.
Maybe to respond a bit to that, that is an issue that is known, and there are people thinking about it, but it's not just this faculty that's very diverse and decentralized. It's to communicate within all faculties. It's a huge challenge, but you're right.
There's also a challenge to ask or make study associations communicate to each other, so it's everybody's problem. It's not a structural, it's not a school, it's not a bureaucratic admin problem. It's a challenge for everybody on all levels, also on the personal level.
I think going back to that, students do not get involved with extracurricular activities like helping on strategy level. They also see it as a nightmare that the system punishes them to actually do those extracurricular activities. So it might be an idea to come up with a way to support them in doing that, while, for example, combining it with their studies, with their program. Do you have a way how to do that?
Yeah, that's the ongoing issue. Can we substitute curricular activities for non-curricular activities? Can we add ECTS grades or whatever? There are legal constraints. There are also constraints that there are no-go areas that you don't want to. Part of the valorization or the not being punished is intrinsic. It's learning from what you are doing, so it's already there. Sometimes that can be supported if it can be made objective, and I'm open to ideas with respect to certificates or award kinds of way to recognize a student activity or student dynamism. I'm not sure that again that students do this or only want to do that if it is recognized as or in terms of ECTS or grades. Think about indeed creative news, but I think the main issue is that you're given the opportunity to engage, and the engagement itself and being a recognized engager as you are here. The learning you have, the communication is a goal in itself. Second, and that's equally important, we have extracurricular activities that we find so interesting as a school, in terms of learning and experiential learning, that we're thinking about why not make them part of the formal learning system and of the delivery mode of courses, or as an activity that is a substitute for a tutor group meeting, and in that sense make it part of the ECTS counted activity. So a lot of extracurricular activities we can or could make part of the overall curriculum, but it's finding out how far you can and want to go. It'll be an eternal challenge, but the challenge is yours. Do as much as you can and as much as you want to, and make sure that you learn from that, because that's the ultimate goal. You do it. It's to enrich yourself, to be part of a community, to learn to know people, to engage in a school, to discuss things with deans and associate deans and study and tutors and so on. But yeah, be creative, help us think about how we could do these things and there are many ways. Yep.
No more questions?
Last one, yeah.
Just a general question.
Good.
Because I think a lot of people here might be interested now how to more involvement in the whole process, because I personally have to say, like, I would like to take part of being part of all this, think some others might be too, and yeah, then we don't have to ask the question 100 times. So maybe just what is the possibility we have now?
Sure, that's clear. First of all, Rendy is a student advisor. He's the formal channel to the executive board. He also chairs the student council. We will address the student council as kind of the platform where to engage students in the several or the diverse groups. There's also the other approach, that is when we directly want to contact or communicate to or ask or invite the study associations to be part of a project team. We have the control body, and we know who the study association presidents are. So those are the main two channels. It's a student council, that's why we have a student council and a student representative, and the study associations. That are the two main and most clear channels to communicate and to retrieve information and to ask people to join the teams.
Yeah, you can always send me an email too if you want to be in the loop. But main communication will indeed, through Scope and Student Council, will be set up probably. And within a month, we'll start with the new student strategy team and start working on what we achieved last year.
And I can commit to that, and Joya or somebody else, but Joya now will take care of that. I'm in favor. For me, it's a very thoroughly enjoyable, a very relaxing and fatiguing, but that's no worry, but a very direct way to communicate to students is organizing sessions like this. And I'm absolutely willing to do that on a quarterly basis, because last year we started the town talks, or how do we call that?
Talking about SBE. That's this event.
Yeah, but we had town events, or
the project name was Town Hall Event.
Town Hall Event. So
turned out to be
let's do this 4 times a year. Yeah, or at least 3 or 4 times a year. Yeah, no problem. Absolutely no problem. On the strategic update or on any other issue you would like to discuss. And if you have ideas to invite or a speaker, or if you would like to take the floor yourself, or the student council would do so, or studies, please do.
And if you have any issues you'd like to get an answer to or questions, you can always just send them to, and there will be a response.
Okay.
I think that's it.
That's it. Okay. Thank you very much.